Hey everyone, my name is Tobias Siegel with PromoLife, and we're going to talk about pulsed electromagnetic frequency machines and hopefully answer some questions that are commonly asked. My guest today is Dr. John Kressler, who is an expert in the PEMF field and is the founder of Nordic Health Solutions. Before we get started, John, can you please tell us about yourself and what you do with Nordic Health Solutions?
Surely. Firstly, Tobias, thank you for inviting me to talk about PEMF and Nordic Health Solutions. I am an allopathic medical doctor trained in Ireland and did my medical training in Ireland. Came back to the U.S. and did PhD work in pharmacology and toxicology. And pretty much since then, I have been working in lifestyle medicine or in holistic medicine, trying to help my clients to realize that there are other solutions to health and wellness outside of pharmaceutical. And partnering with companies like PromoLife and ePulse Magnetics, which we'll talk about, to get the word out to people to know, hey, look, you can be your own doctor, so to speak, and you should be. And I'm here as a physician scientist to try to let them know what is the best of the best in each class. And that's my goal. So I function as a distributor for devices that I feel are reputable and morally run, and produce the scientific results that the people deserve to be getting when they're especially paying significant amounts of money sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, that's great info on what you do and about your organization. To really get started, the main question that for people just getting into this is, what is PEMF? And so I would like for you to do your best to answer that pretty basic question.
Okay, great question, obviously. So as you can see, I am wearing a PEMF probe. I'm actually doing PEMF therapy.
So that's not a tie you're wearing?
No, that's not a tie. It's very good. Now, this is a PEMF probe, and we could talk about a probe up front. We use the word probe to explain this accessory because we use this specifically in veterinarian medicine. We will use a probe to, say, go over a horse until we get to a point where the horse moves or flitches or does something. And we know that that's a sore spot. So the probe actually finds areas that need work or need therapy. And in this particular case, magnetic therapy. Now, magnetic therapy has been around since the Egyptians, so it's nothing new. But when we ask about what is PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic fields, well, we're specifically talking about PEMF therapeutic devices. But this really was the beginnings with Nikola Tesla, who was the first one to notice the association between electricity and magnetism, so that there's a perpendicular field produced with electricity, which eventually led him to become the inventor of the AC motor. So I give credence to I would say to Tesla to start, and then in the 40s and 50s, we started with the space program, especially the Russians, and we had to realize how to survive in space. And on Earth, we have a magnetic field at the core and at the combining of the stratosphere that it gives all life, cellular life, magnetic fields. And you need that because we're electrical beings.
Yeah.
So the PEMF came from the initial studies from Russia, and then of course NASA, and NASA realized how important it was because they had discovered that the amount of the magnetic field in the Earth was greatly diminished over the last 150,000 years.
Interesting.
And so this is a very big deal. In fact, no matter how healthy you live, if you're not using some type of exogenous magnetic fields, you would not be healthy the way we were created. So 150,000 years ago, according to NASA, it was about 30 Gauss that you got when you were walking without rubber shoes and you were earthing and stuff like that. Today, it's about 0.23.
Wow, that's a lot lower.
Yeah, and if it got to zero, we would die.
Yeah.
You cannot survive. I mean, we are an electrical being, and so the Germans, the Russians, and somewhat the Japanese, as you know, Toby, that are much more into using physics over chemistry. And these technologies are used very successfully in integrative cancer clinics throughout the world. And veterinarians were, and also in botany, also for plants. I mean, so I'm not taking away from there because that's probably the most life on this earth is plants,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
multi-wave oscillators, like I think you can maybe see one in the corner there.
Oh, nice.
One of those kind of things at PMF. These are options to using pharmaceuticals. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the synergy of a lot of other things that PromoLife has later on. But pulsed electromagnetic fields, I gave a little bit of a history before I defined it. But in the end, it is a fast upswing and a faster downswing, which we call a slew rate, at a random pace. And like I said, this random these pulsing of these magnetic fields, there's like a little beam, and this goes into tissue. And whether that tissue be animal, plant, or human, it changes the transmembrane conductance, which is what we use to quantify the electrical potential or the battery of life. And if you don't have your electric potential correct, you do not function. It's like you're trying to do your computer with 10 things on your browser. The RAM is just used up. So PEMF artificially, through the magnetic pulse, changes the electrical conductance from cells that are not well to being the way they need to be. And I always try to say to patients that it's taking unhealthy cells and making them healthy. And one of the main reasons why we use PMF in oncology is as this magnetic beam is coming into tissue, cancer cells, because they are multiplying very quickly, they do not produce a cellular membrane that is very stable. And that pulse actually will destroy neoplastic cells. And at the same time, for healthy cells, or let's say eukaryotic or prokaryotic, or we'll use eukaryotic, meaning human cells, the cell membrane gets damaged with toxicity. And that cell membrane gets restored through electroporation, or you could call it even cellular breathing. And that's how the electrical potential is restored.
Okay. No, that's really a really good explanation on what it's used for, and that it's great info. Moving forward, one of the things that I when talking to people about EMF that I get asked quite a bit is you always hear people talking about how bad EMF is. So obviously PEMF and EMF are different in their ways. Can you go over if somebody is wanting to know more about the dangers of EMF, but then there's positives of PEMF? Can you explain that a little bit for somebody to understand?
I think it's a great question, and one part of the question is the problem, and the other part of the question is the solution.
Okay.
So electromagnetic field or electromagnetic smog is undoubtedly probably the worst thing that humanity has ever had to face. And the amount of material that is coming out due to non-ionizing radiation is tremendous. And all electrical things, even the PMF device I'm wearing, does produce some EMF. It is, if you will, like exhaust for a combustion engine. You know what I mean? So you cannot have no EMF, but you can have very low EMF. And, I would always recommend people to have things like Greenway or the Stelzer-Heiser, filters for EMF. But you need to have them in every receptacle, not just one. A lot of times it doesn't work that way. You have to protect the whole house and take a sheet of aluminum and put it over your wall where your smart meter is. But EMF is very different. And again, it's really talking about non-ionizing radiation, which is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Yeah. But they were trying to say in the past that non-ionizing radiation was not dangerous. This is definitely not true. Where ionizing radiation, we already know X-rays and gamma rays and things like that, is actually the same. So to protect ourselves with, like I said, EMF filters and Faraday cages in areas where you're being bathed by this silent killer, it's not a joke. But how it does the destruction is something worth talking about. So this non-ionizing radiation destroys the cell membrane, which is repaired by the PEMF. It also further goes on to destroy the nuclear membrane in the DNA, causing a high amount of reactive oxygen species and of course, pro-cancerous. So it's something that no matter where you live, I don't care if it's Alaska or in New York City, you are being exposed to microwave and non-ionizing radiation. And if you're not doing something about it, your health will definitely deteriorate.
So like the PEMF kind of acts as the battery, so it recharges your body, where EMF can, to a point, diminish and take away. So the PEMF is essentially adding it back. Is that a good way to explain it?
Exactly. Okay. I mean, the thing is, if you think about it, that the EMF is draining the battery, and the PEMF is the solution. But if the EMF is not corrected, we know what the results are. I mean, they have done numerous studies, even in Sweden in the 80s. They were doing studies with EMF and radiation from cellular technology, and the telecommunications market has covered up it for decades, but they can't do it anymore. And now, 5G is around the corner, and God help us all.
Yeah,
so I'm just saying, if we're not protecting ourselves.
Oh, I definitely agree. No, that's really good info. It also, let's definitely keep this, we want to learn as much as possible. And, one of the big things that I run into when, especially looking at PEMF machines, is you see, PEMF machines that are low PEMF, and then there's high PEMF machines. And so, I think, I see advantages and disadvantages. If you could really highlight that and go over, what does that mean to somebody looking at, looking at getting into PEMF?
Okay, excellent question again, Tobias. And the answer really comes down to what we're going to use the term horsepower.
Okay.
One of my mentors and colleagues, William Pollack, is another medical doctor, and from the state of Maryland, where I'm originally from, it told me a long time ago about this. And there's an actual equation that shows that the distance between the targeted therapy and the actual probe, that as you get further and further away, it reduces, I think, at a level of like 1/4. So you have to have a lot of power to penetrate tissue.
Okay.
And this can only be done by power. And power in magnetic fields is measured in Gauss or in Tesla, or as Dr. Pollack would say, in microtesla.
Yeah.
But you have to have horsepower if you want to reverse cellular processes that become pathological. So if you have something like a 2-cylinder engine versus a 12-cylinder engine, you cannot go the speed of a 12-cylinder.
Yeah.
And you certainly can't do it in time. So for practitioners, especially, you have a very limited amount of time. So you need to have a high voltage device. Now, in saying that, in Germany, with every patient that we do, when we see patients for cancer or any kind of chronic condition, we check their blood with dark field microscopy. And I cannot tell you that whether high voltage or low voltage on dark field microscopy actually shows the same.
Mm-hmm.
However, symptomatically and how you feel post treatment is tremendous.
Okay.
You can't compare. But scientifically, I cannot say that low voltage, which are significantly cheaper, are bad. But I will say that the high voltage is more efficient and it's faster.
Okay.
And so I'm not saying one is better than the other, but if you're not well and you want to get well, time is important. And you don't have maybe weeks. You have half hour
Yeah.
or an hour, and high voltage becomes a time efficient equation.
So that's a really good way to I feel like that explained it really well. So basically, the high powered systems are going to get you to that result faster. So if somebody who doesn't have the time like somebody else, that's going to be a more efficient product for them to consider.
Yeah, and like I said, for me, I've been working with PMF for about, that's going on my 12th year now. Hard to believe. And I've seen, I think, about just about every low powered and high powered device. And can tell you, at almost 12 years, I have never seen anyone walk off of a low power or a low voltage device and wow, I feel amazing. Where with a high power device, I have actually never seen someone who has not had a profound experience.
Yeah. No, I've used the ePulse device as well, and it's and that's what I like about it. You can really feel it. Like you put it on, you turn it up. I mean, you can obviously adjust the frequency, but you do feel what is going on when using that product, and it was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, I was blown away.
I'm glad
And so obviously we're here to talk about the ePulse unit. So
Mhm.
let's dive into that, and let's find out what sets this unit apart from other high frequent or high PEMF device units.
So I'll touch on one point briefly. So PEMF is really, you can look at it as a kind of a heads and tails. Heads meaning a high voltage device, what we call a ringer or a hummer,
Yeah.
and that's because when you use an oscilloscope, I have one here in the office somewhere. You can see how this kind of hums itself back down. It's pretty neat if you have an oscilloscope and a Tesla meter, you can actually watch it. And then we have oscillators, and most low voltage PMF devices are oscillators, and they're different than ringers.
Okay.
A ringer is a pulsed random frequency. It's not a frequency, where the oscillators, they will set the Schumann frequency or 10 hertz. That's very different. Now the problem with these oscillators is that when your cells are not well, they do not accept frequency because they're now out of tune. So I've had fundamental issues with the low voltage devices, but there has been a lot of research on it. So I can't say that there's not some advantageous reasons for having a low power, but it's certainly nothing compared to high voltage, and that's over a decade of experience around the world. And ePulse, to get to that question, I think has done it the best.
Okay.
For the best price. There are only a handful of companies that are really high voltage to PMF devices, and the difference, and you'd ask me to explain it, is in the delivery. So when you use a probe like this large loop or a small loop or a butterfly loop or
Yeah.
a rope or a mat, it's about the delivery of the magnetic pulse. And the delivery on this is very smooth. And so if you do a Coke versus Pepsi with the other competitors, ePulse has always won. And so their delivery system is the most efficient.
Okay, that's really good information about the ePulse magnetic system. And so with the ePulse, there's also two models. Can you please tell us about each model and go over the differences as far as why one might pick one versus the other?
Okay, great question again. Now, the ePulse has one model called Elite, which is my personal favorite of all PMF devices. And the reason why is that, first of all, it is analog. Now, some companies have decided to go with a semiconductor or solid state technology. Unfortunately, that spark is artificial, and the range, which you can detect on an oscilloscope, is not the same. So the therapeutic effects only work with a spark gap PMF or an analog versus digital.
Okay.
So that, of course, is a big, big distinction. Not that I'm against technology, but it's just not the same. And the experience is never the same when you have a non-spark gap. And all low voltages are not spark
Yeah.
gap. So that's a big problem. Then the second thing is that the Elite has the ability, and it is the only one, it has the ability to change the intensity, which means more Gauss
Yep.
and more Tesla, with the pulse rate. So the other ones are set and in an algorithm where you can't change it. So you have a single dial with the competitors, and that's set, by the manufacturer. And I don't like to be limited like
Yeah. No.
that.
Absolutely.
I mean, why would you? I don't want someone to tell me how to drive. I decide how to drive on my own. And so when you learn through training, um, with Promo Life, that you or myself, you'll learn how to use pulse rate and intensity, and have a different experience in when to use the differences between high and low intensity and high and low pulse rate. So it's the only device that does it, and it's analog. Now, its junior partner is very good, but it does not have the separation
Yeah.
of pulse rate and intensity. So my druthers is always to go with the Elite, but the lower model is just as good with the delivery system of the probe and the actual spark gap and everything, but you do not have that ability, and it is less horsepower.
That's
So
and that's good to know. So people who are looking to get into PEMF, that's a great goes over exactly what I think people need to know about the two different models.
yeah,
That's good.
and I'll just say something to this, Toby. So I used to say to myself that if you were a smaller person or a less sick person, you needed less horsepower, and vice versa. But I, over the years, have changed my philosophy on that, and the fact that you can change pulse rate in intensity is the most important thing to me. And I think the other manufacturers are quite arrogant about this, and they're not asking the practitioners, because if they did, they wouldn't be just producing
Yeah.
one type of model. So that's why I think the Elite is head and shoulders, and it is, for the cost, it is 1/4 of some of
I
these other ones
yeah.
that are nowhere near. It's
I know.
crazy.
I mean, I've seen a lot of these other PEMF products on the market. I mean, it's crazy, and that's the beauty with the ePulse is it does
Yep.
hit it does even more what those units do, but it's a much better price.
I mean, again, I have to give it to the manufacturing engineers. I mean, I know them well for well over a decade now, and they figured out a way to be
Cool.
better.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's really good info to know about the ePulse unit, and it's a personally tried it myself, and I can say one of the big things that I noticed when I was using it, because I was using it during work, and
right.
a lot of times if you're sitting in front of a computer every day, you drive home and you feel somewhat drained, and so that's probably a lot of the EMF that you're being exposed to. But when using the
Right.
PEMF device during working hours, I came home and it was almost like my battery had been recharging that day. I felt good. I felt like I've been outside. I felt like I've been able to, you didn't feel like you've been at work all day. So big experience. It was a great experience that I had, and how I felt. Um,
I thank you for sharing that, because sometimes I could say it myself, but it's nice, Toby, as a
yeah.
I mean, as an objective person, I mean, you saw such an amazing difference. And very few technologies can you get that kind of difference.
That's honestly, I noticed that more than anything. Like a lot of the stuff that I try, I don't notice much. I mean, I'm a younger guy. I don't have really any health problems that I'm aware of, and so for me to notice something tells me that this product is definitely has the power, has the ability to change people's lives.
And what I have to warn, it's quite addictive. So
It,
once you realize what it's like to be charged, you don't want to go back to being
no, you don't.
non-charged.
Absolutely. That's one of those things. If you feel, nobody wants to not feel good.
I mean, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit if I can. I mean, PromoLife understands as a company the philosophy of prophylactic preventive
Yeah,
medicine.
absolutely. That's what it's
And
about.
Nordic Health Solutions has for probably 7 or 8 years now has always endorsed PromoLife's ozone devices and ozone or oxygen therapies. Now PromoLife's carrying EWAT, um, and I personally love the synergistic effect between ozone therapy, EWAT exercise with oxygen therapy, and the far infrared
Yeah,
sauna with ozone. I mean, those three uh, are pretty potent. I don't really know too many things are as potent as the oxygen therapy. Because all diseases
yeah,
associated with some form of oxygen deficiency, and so we can use ozone in conjunction with EWAT, and it is in conjunction with far infrared sauna. And if you do PMF before and after, and you open up and make these cells healthy, detox, it is an amazing experience. And I would highly recommend everyone to consider um, the combination of the PromoLife ozone generator, the PromoLife EWAT system, and the PromoLife dome saunas.
yeah.
And there's several, but they're all on the PromoLife website, and I have them myself. So I would highly recommend them with PMF
Yeah,
therapy.
it's. I mean, I've fortunately had a chance to use all these products because that's what we do here, and you're right. I mean, the oxygen deficiency is a big issue. By putting more oxygen in the body, I feel like you have more energy. Also, the infrared saunas that it really provides, it gives your body the ability to detoxify. And if you're exercising and you're doing all this stuff to your body, you got to get that stuff out of your body as well. And that's honestly where I feel the saunas come in, and they're so powerful. And it's amazing how when you use these products in conjunction, you can really feel amazing.
I would say amen to that, Toby, and I thank you and your family for many
Yeah.
decades promoting good health, and it's good health is the responsibility of every
It
individual.
is, and it's sometimes overlooked by many, but I feel like we're coming into this age where people are starting to really focus on what they can do for themselves to feel better, because we have a lot more tools at our fingertips than we ever used to, and
Uh,
it's great to know that we have the tools now.
we certainly do, and like I said, I on behalf of ePulse Magnetics, I am very happy to see the new relationship with PromoLife, and I hope that your clients have become successful with their health with adding PMF to their arsenal, the way I have with my clients with Nordic Health.
Absolutely, and we're really excited to work with ePulse and work with Nordic Health Solutions as well, and this is going to be a good journey forward. Okay. Well,
Absolutely.
hey, I feel like we answered a lot of awesome questions, and we're gonna let John go here, and this was super informative for myself. I learned a lot more about PEMF than I ever knew. I also want to really stress to anybody, if you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to give us a call at 888-742-3404. You can also visit our website at www.promolife.com, and you will see the ePulse magnetic product up there. And feel free to reach out to us, and we can get any additional questions answered that you may have. John, hey, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. Okay,
Thank
take
you,
it
Toby,
easy.
for having me.